Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Level Up, the personal branding video show. In this episode, I'm looking at the one and only Madonna. Now, my little nickname for Madonna for this episode is going to be the Mistress of Change, because that's really her brand is changing. Um, she really did it in two ways. She either had personas or looks that she used. Um, and then there's the music, and then there's selective controversy she would pick, and finally, then there's the whole use of how she would use her sexuality. So I'll touch on all of those a little. The first is the sound. So Madonna in her first album, it was sort of club music, a little new wave-ish. Burning Up, I just wanted to check whether that was disco or funk, and I think it had a little more. It was definitely on the one, and there were some funk aspects to it, but it was very popish. Um, and then she moved on to like a version and being popish, and then she later in the '80s she became left sort of the R&B soul, blue-eyed soul roots of the early '80s and stuff, and then became very pop. I remember hearing that some folks were thought Madonna was black on that first album. I remember she broke on black radio first, even before MTV, even before pop. I mean, Columbus, Ohio. My senior year. I mean, the first time I heard Madonna was not on white radio, it's black radio. So interesting, Lucky Star, Holiday, that stuff. So she broke on black radio first, and she's always had I think a healthy relationship with the black community. So in the '90s, she brought in EDM aspects. Vogue was probably the first, and then erotica. So through the '90s, and she kind of grew and stretched the music, and she would not everything that she did in the '90s was EDM. She still did some pop and ballads and stuff like that, but that was the predominant sound for her, and the '90s, and it's interesting, with Drake and Beyonce now exploring EDM. I mean, I think EDM is one of those musical territories, electronic dance music, where there's a lot there to borrow and meld and do things with. I mean, that's essentially what the great ones do. Prince did it, and as we go through, you'll see the great ones. That is what they do. And so recently, in the last 5 to 7 years, Madonna has started to bring more Latin aspects of her music into her music. So Madonna, her musical sound is always changing, but she has a distinctive singing voice. So, regardless of what genre or what she's doing in her music, when Madonna has a new song out, it's Madonna, because, you know, she's secure in her vocal style, and it's recognizable. The second way that Madonna brands is through her look or her persona. So when she first broke out, she had this kind of punk bohemian look. I mean, spiky, she had the little spiky leather wristband. She had the leather, and then she had different, multicolored hair, cut spiky, so she had her own look and very imitated. I remember a lot of, 83, 84, 85, a lot of young women and girls got onto that Madonna look. And then then she did Material Girl, where she basically, kind of borrowed that Marilyn Monroe look, and then went back to the punk bohemian look. And then in the late '80s, she kind of went earthy. I mean, Madonna's not a natural blonde, so, but she did get rid of the blonde there, you know, in the late '80s and you know, maybe even into the real early '90s, and then she kind of did her Marilyn Monroe thing again. And then she sort of, I guess, you know, when music dropped, you know, with gangster rap big and everything, she kind of did that gangsta glam thing, you know, in the late '90s, and then now she has this persona that she calls Madam X, and it's sort of a, this is real. There's a lot of elements to it. I mean, it's uh, sometimes it's punk. There's leather. You know, there's always sexuality with Madonna. So there's that aspect, and sometimes she wears an eye patch. Um, Again, leather, fishnet. So this Madam X persona is kind of like bits and pieces of all these other personas. An interesting thing too is Madonna um, married these personas not just with her music, but when she was in movies. So Desperately Seeking Susan uh, kind of boosted her that punk bohemian thing she had in the early to mid '80s, and then you know when she did a Body of Evidence in the early '90s and Evita, that's when she reached back and really doubled down again on the Marilyn Monroe aspect, because you know, um, and Dick Tracy. So you know, so she went back and kind of embraced the Madonna. So Madonna or the Marilyn Monroe. So Madonna was very cognizant of cross branding, you know, throughout her career between her movies and her music as well. The other interesting aspect when it comes to Madonna and her branding is how she handles controversy. Remember in the late '80s, like a prayer, and I think if I remember the video properly, black man dates a white woman, is lynched, but she has him kind of crucified, if I remember correctly, and has a black choir singing it. So you know, Madonna knew what she was doing, and there was controversy. I don't know why. It was kind of tame for them, and it still is. And you know, in the early '90s, she came out with a sex book and whatnot. It was interesting when the Playboy pictures broke, because you know that used to always be a scandal, and you know, so you know, Madonna, when she was struggling trying to make money back in the day, I mean, she did find a photographer, and he took nudes, and you know, when she became famous, he sold it, and so they went up to Madonna's like, Playboy has those nudes, you're going to be all over the place, and her, you know, and her reaction was she shrugged her shoulders, was like, so, and so she kind of like, whatever, you're going to do what you're going to do, and kind of downplayed that. And but you know, Madonna's always played with sexuality, but that was kind of new. I mean, that was frightening for a lot of people, you know, sex tapes and whatnot, and Madonna was just like, whatever, you know, she kind of took the Barnum Bailey approach with that situation. And the final thing when it comes to Madonna's branding is sexuality, and she's always played with it. She still plays with it a lot. I mean, I follow her on Instagram, and you know, I mean, look, Madonna's 90, and then in a wheelchair. You know, years from now, she's still gonna have that sexual side. I mean, it'll just be like, okay, 90-year-olds are, you know, we're sexual beings too, and she's done it throughout her career. And one of the interesting things, and I think this question's been settled, but even going back to the '80s and '90s, there's always been this argument. You know, this Madonna, is she exploiting her sexuality, or is it empowering? Is she a feminist, or is she, you know, softcore porn? And to be honest, I mean, now when you look at what um, Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion, some of these younger hip hop artists, female hip hop artists, you know, the under 30 crowd. I mean, clearly, you know, this new generation, feels like she was a feminist and saying things on behalf of a woman that needed to be said when it comes to sexuality. And some will still disagree with that. I mean, I don't know, but I'm not sure if that's much of a debate with the millennials and Gen Z. I mean, certainly boomers, will have their opinions, and Gen X will too. But and the young folks write the history on music. I'll do a audio podcast on who writes the history, but it's usually two generations forward who writes the history. And so, regardless of what boomers or Gen X believe or think of Madonna's use of her sexuality, yeah, I mean, I think she's to go down in history as a liberator and not, an exploiter of her own sexuality. So I'm not sure who I'm going to do next, but stay tuned. This is fun. I really, music's my passion. I love music. I mean, when I was, in middle school, my dream was to be a disc jockey, yes. And look at me, I have 4 albums, you know, branding, and musicians, and I'm gonna do some historical stuff, in the coming months as well on music. So it's my passion. I love writing as well, and I love my science fiction and fantasy. But it's music has always been kind of the thing that's kept me going. So this is kind of a labor and love. So until the next episode, have a good day.